Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome back to the Humble Word program. This is Anthony, and I'm so happy that you are here today. And we're outside this afternoon. I guess it's almost evening. We're looking at chapter 4 in Ephesians, but we're moving on. We're not going to be in chapter 4, verse 11 today. We're going into verse 12 and following. And for the sake of time, I'm not going to read all of it, but we will look at verse 12, let me read that. For the perfecting of the saints, for the work of the ministry, for the edifying of the body of Christ. One quick thing before I go any further though, would you please go down to the About section of this video when this video is done, or now, and check out the link that I'm going to be leaving, redeem.love. Just click on that, go to it, take a look, see what's there, and if you can help in any way, please do. This is a ministry that I'm a part of, and I would appreciate it if you would just take a look at it, all right? So Ephesians chapter 4, verse 12 is the 4 verse of this passage. Not the 4th, but the 4, F-O-R. There's actually 3 4s, not 3/4, 3 4s in this verse. The 4s are what the gifts are for. If you remember, and if you got a good memory or a bad memory, you still probably remember. But in the previous verse, we have the gifts that God has given to the church. The apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the pastors, the teachers, 5 of them, 5 gifts. What are they given for? Don't like ending in a preposition, but you know what I'm trying to say here. These gifts are given for these things that are in verse 12. But I also want you to understand that it's not just that we have to understand. When you're reading Paul, the writings of Paul, he's not always the easiest person to follow along with, okay? As a matter of fact, if you ever try to outline any of the sentences in any of the writings of Paul, you've got a challenge on your hand. But diagram, that is, if you ever diagram a sentence, because some of these sentences he writes is a whole paragraph long. Well, in this case, verse 11 says that he gave us these gifts to the church. But then it says, for the perfecting of the saints, for the work of the ministry, for the edifying of the body of Christ. Believe it or not, scholars of eminent rank disagree on the actual meaning or how they're supposed to work together, these different clauses in this verse. Because what some people will read and see is that the gifts were given, let's just say the pastors and teachers were given for the perfecting of the saints. Yea, for the perfecting, for the maturing, for the, equipping of the saints. And what's that for? For the work of the ministry. So in other words, you equip the saints so that they can do the work of the ministry. Now, I have preached that, and it is a truth. And the reason I say that is because the pastor, the preacher, the pastor of your church, as I've been a pastor, is not there to do the work of the church. The pastor is there to do the work of pastoring and teaching so that the church can do the work of the church. The church is made up of people who are individually called by God to do ministry themselves. But they have to be taught. They have to be discipled. They have to learn how to do and what to do, what God has called them to do. And so the pastor, the shepherd, the teacher is there to instruct, to guide, to help them to mature in their faith so that they can do the work, the ministry of the church. And what is that for? What is that ministry for? For the edifying, for the building up of the body. Now, that makes perfect sense. However, it can also be interpreted this way, that the gifts were given to the church, the apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, and teachers, for the perfecting of the saints, big airplane, for the perfecting of the saints, for the work of the ministry, for the edifying of the body of Christ. 3 different fours. It is also interpreted by some that the first 2 fours are together and they build onto the third, which would be the second. So see, how Paul has written this, even the most scholarly of scholars disagree on what is actually being said here. They're not disagreeing on the truth in general, just in the little ways he's forming his sentence. Because in one aspect, the pastor, the teacher, is to be given to help perfect or mature or to equip the saints or the Christians so that they can do the work of the ministry. Or it could mean that they are given to for the perfecting of the saints and for the work of the ministry, for the edifying of the body. So, however you want to look at it, except I think, honestly, the best way to interpret it, the best way to explain it is that these gifts to the church, these different people, these different ministers of the church, these teachers, these prophets, these evangelists, are given so that those in the pew, those of us, those of you, can be perfected, which means, the other way to translate that word is to be equipped, to give you everything you need in order to go out and do the work of the ministry. Now, I think that it is very important. I'll close with this part. What initially is the work of the ministry for? I think this is really important that we catch this, you see. When you unpack this, when you say, okay, this goes here, this goes here, this goes here, what you'll see is that the gifts to the church, those who lead and teach and all that, are there, given to the church, so that you and I can grow, so that we can be matured, so that we can be perfected, equipped, to become the best that we can be to do the work of the Lord, with the first priority being what? The edifying of the body of Christ. Because then in the next verse it says, till. So in other words, there is a process of instruction that leads to maturity, so that the mature and equipped Christian, in the building up of other Christians first, can then take this to do additional work, which is going out into the world and showing people what the church is all about, who Jesus is, the body of Christ, doing the work of the body of Christ in the world. I hope that makes sense. But the key is, you cannot divest, you cannot divorce, whatever metaphor you want to say, the work of the church, within the body, the work of the body within the body. You cannot take that apart. You cannot divorce yourself from that. You cannot be separate and alone and out there without the body of Christ and expect to go do the work of the gospel, which is taking the good news to the lost and dying world. You've got to have a healthy church, you being a part of it, to effectively reach a lost and dying world. All right, well, you think about that. Discuss it. Leave it in the comments what you think. And we will get right back into this and dig in a little bit deeper in the next episode. Have a great day. Remember to check out that link that I told you about. Leave a comment, leave a like, subscribe, and we'll see you tomorrow on the Humble Word.